Hello, everyone, and a very happy Friday. We're super excited that you're joining us on our final day of GitHub Galaxy today, and really hope that you enjoyed the last couple of days of the event. In the sessions that are happening today, we are exploring how to supercharge workflows with enterprise-ready tools that will improve productivity, whilst at the same time reducing costs and onboarding times. And JP and myself, we're particularly excited today that in our fireside chat, we are happy to welcome three leaders, Florin, Or, and Tarun, which all come with a variety of expertise across the software development industry. However, before we do introductions to our guests, let's run through some housekeeping. Three things to keep in mind, perhaps. We've got a Q&A button here. Do utilize the tab in the top right-hand corner. We've got chat moderators that are happy to assist with any questions that you might have. If you feel there's not enough time actually to get some of the most pressing questions and your curiosity answered and addressed, there's actually another button where you can book a meeting with us for a meeting where perhaps with a bit more time and with experts from GitHub, you can do a separate deep dive on some of the topics. Optimal viewing, we recommend that you use the Chrome browser. If you've got any issues with that, there's a couple of guidelines on how to address these. Most likely, perhaps it just needs a refresher. If you need assistance with troubleshooting, do have a look at the Docs tab. There are help documents available, and hopefully with these, it shouldn't be an issue then to participate in our session today. Now, let's hand over to JP for introductions to our guests.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Pritchard. I'm the Staff Customer Success Architect here in EMEA. And Anna and myself, we couldn't be happier to introduce our friends here. And I'd like to welcome to the stage one by one. We have Florin Creanga from Vodafone. Welcome to the stage, Florin.
Hi, JP, Anna. Thank you very much for having me here.
You're welcome. Would you like to take a moment to introduce yourselves and your context?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Florin Creanga, Principal Architect at Vodafone Group, currently driving the definition and the strategy of our tooling strategy. And then let me tell you something about Vodafone in case that there are people still who have not heard of Vodafone. Vodafone, traditionally, we used to be in the telco space. We used to sell mobile plans, broadband, and so like telco related. But right now, we're halfway through our journey to become a telco company. And then as part of the journey, we're putting the software engineers at the core of everything we do. But to build great products, work cannot happen in silos. And because of that, we have brought together all the engineering teams across Europe under one umbrella. And as part of it, we are also creating an employee brand that we call Vodafone Engineering. Then you can see on my t-shirt today. And then we want all our engineers to be part of it. Currently, we've got roughly 10,000 engineers working for us in Vodafone. Then in the next year or so, we are looking to go up to 17,000 engineers. And then my role here at Vodafone is to actually harmonize the way our developers write code, the way they build products, and then drive this digital transformation culture that we are so excited about. Then I'm excited to be here and share some of the findings with you today.
Perfect. Thank you, Florin. Thank you for your introduction. I'd like to welcome Or Memon from NICE onto the stage. Thank you all. Lovely to see you. Would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, most definitely. My name is Or. I'm a veteran of the DevOps infra. I'm a little bit cold, so don't judge me. I work at NICE Corp, which is a multi-national company with roughly 9,000 employees and 5,000 of them in the R&D. The company is huge. It has a lot of lines of businesses in the anti-frauding world, call centers, homeland security. It's very vast, it's very vibrant, and it's ever-changing. I'm managing a team which is very particular in the industry. It is called named Global DevOps and Cloud Team. Our team comprises from cloud architects, developers, and cloud ops. We are providing trusted advisory across the board, hybrid cloud management and vulnerability, platform development of new tools and features, and enablement of new platforms.
Brilliant, Or. Welcome, welcome. And I'd like to invite, lastly but not leastly, Tarun Arora from Avanade onto the stage. Welcome, Tarun.
What a great place to be. Thank you so much for having me here in the conference. My name is Taran Arora. I am the Regional Head of Software Engineering and DevOps at Avanade. I also lead the modern app transformation, which is very much inclusive of cloud transformation and how to bring the goodness of modern software engineering and DevOps practices into the hands of developers. My background's always been software engineering, so very passionate about this subject. I am also a Microsoft MVP and author. I often speak at international conferences. I was at Build, and I'm looking forward to the next Build as well. It's a pleasure to be here today, and looking forward to having some great questions come in from the audience as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. We're so fortunate. Now, let's get started with a little bit of an exercise here, because we're here to talk about developer productivity and efficiency. We want to know what that might look like for you. So in a moment, we'll start a poll. And what we would like you to do is think about this question here. So when you think about developer efficiency, which areas are you looking for your tooling to support you in? And it could be collaboration in a source. It could be to reduce that developer context switching. You could be very excited by all the news on AI recently. Or you could be looking to do some of those more traditional, more the foundational pieces to create quality code, to write secure code. Could be all of the above. What do you think? So the poll's just going to start in one moment. Let's see what comes in. You can see it's a little bit of a trick question as well there. I always find it interesting that when you show the results live, it changes people's behavior. You know, I'm exactly the same. Do you hold back and wait to see what other people are doing, or are you confident and you've got a highly opinionated answer already? So we've got a bit of a share here. Very interesting. The reduction of context switching is coming up quite hard there, along with the interest in AI, but most of all of the above. And I think that's what our speakers here today will likely be touching on as well. So thank you for your contributions, and let's get to our chat. So first of all, I'd like to come to you, Florin, to ask, when we talk about efficient developer tooling, what does that evoke to you?
Yeah, thank you, JP. So about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we started this very big digital transformation in Europe to bring together all those engineers. And as part of it, the initial step was, let's standardize and harmonize our developer tooling. But what do we mean by developer tooling? And actually, we did something similar to what you just did, JP. We asked like a survey to our engineers saying, okay, guys, what do you mean by developer tooling? When I'm talking about them, what do you understand? And then we started seeing all the tools that they use, but some tools, as you know, they might support multiple capabilities. And then since I'm sitting in the enterprise architecture, and then we in enterprise architecture, we love to have our taxonomies, I started putting together a tooling taxonomy. And then we realized that actually we've got 400 tooling capabilities in Vodafone. And then we had to sort of like split those into multiple like value streams to group them. And then in the end, we ended up with multiple value streams for our tools. So what we need to make sure we take into account is we need to have tools for like planning the software, building the software, releasing it, and then afterwards operating it. But one area which also is apparent, we need to have the same enablers. And then as part of the enabler, we've got chat ops or chat like Microsoft Teams or Slack. Doesn't matter if our developers are using Slack or Teams, then our business teams are using something else. We are not going to be able to have efficient developers because we are creating another barrier, another silo in our company, because then our developers are talking using one tool, one platform, our business users a different one. So when I think, then we think in Vodafone about the developer tooling, we think about all the tools end to end, which allow us to take a software from the idea to the release, to the feedback, and then go back into the loop. I know I might mention agile without saying agile, but actually this is really kind of like how we look into it, because then unless we take into account everything, we are not going to be able to have an efficient developer tooling ecosystem.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for that. So I'm hearing about the consolidation. I'm hearing about the listening, first of all. Those are really important themes. And I'm hearing about the lines of communication within the business. To you, Or, and then to you next, Taran. Or does that look similar to you in your organizational context? Tell us a little bit about that, if you may.
Yeah, I will take the first question in a little bit an unorthodox fashion, if you will. In many ways, we're looking on it from a holistic standpoint, and also my questions are going to be holistic, because I think we are in the tech community, we are striving to think about things more about abstracts and not like technology oriented. So in essence, I think that everything that has to do for us, I mean, developer tools, we're looking at everything that can bring more quality, developer satisfaction and time to market. And it can start with a good CRM or even with the right mouse for you or the automatic chair. In essence, we are not robots, we are human beings. And as such, we have a lot of mixture of things that are coming together into one pot. And once we started thinking that way, it was very easy to get into the mind and heart of people and try to give them the right technology. It's like the right passage for you to bring them the technological edge, or what we're trying to bring them as a holistic or global teams into the world of needs and yearns, if you will.
Yeah, brilliant. All. Thank you. Over to you, Taran.
Okay, so from my perspective, developer tooling is everything from planning, collaboration, execution, then observing and learning, and then being able to repeat that cycle in a far more efficient way. And with the sprawl of the spectrum being no code, low code to the vast end of cloud native, the tools are out there, and there's more than we would want. In reality, there is quite niche tools there, but we have to be careful that we're not introducing tools that would cause more problems in the handoffs. And there's this unsaid thing, right, of best of breed versus integrated, and that's what we need to be conscious about as well. So developer tooling is really empowering your developers to be at their best, to be able to craft code and sort of bring the skills that they have to life and create products that can be enjoyed by the end consumers and deliver value. So that's my definition of developer tooling. It would involve anything from collaboration, as Florin touched on, to the more advanced CI/CD infrastructure. But then also on the other side, being able to deeply observe how your applications and your products are working in production, in live, and then being able to reuse that feedback to inform how the future of the product evolves as well.
Oh, brilliant, Taran. And we're going to keep that thoughts in our head there about really that empowerment of the developer. And like you said, or as well, that holistic approach to any small gain to improve the lives of the developer can improve the lives of the whole business. And that brings us on to our next question, actually, which is around that area of productivity and business, and what the business itself is looking to achieve with these efficiencies, with these investments in developer tooling. And staying with you, Taran, and particularly in your context here, consulting, helping to coach and guide customers on their journey, how have you found that with the different businesses that you've worked in? What are the businesses looking to achieve with that productivity gain?
Sure. So I personally feel that working in the consulting business, I get to see a lot more customers, and that amplifies the experience, but also shows you what the trends in the market are. And looking at the macro climate around us, there is a squeeze in spending. There is a recognition that the growth is starting to stop a little bit, and therefore there is a need for doing more for less. And when there is a need for doing more for less, you want to think about empowering your developers to be at their best, to be more productive than ever before. And that's one way of achieving more outcome through the same means. And if we look at being able to do more for less, things that come to mind, which you touched on your poll as well quite early on, is things like AI. Copilot has come a long way from being a prototype, a demo, and being an MVP, right? Got my hands on it quite early, and had the privilege of feeding back. But now being able to see Copilot X and how productive it makes us as developers, and it's never been about replacing developers. It's always been about supplementing developers to bring the best practices to bear, so that when you are designing those blueprints and you're creating products, you're starting on the right foot. It's also about TDD and test coverage, because there's one thing about being able to write code, but if the code is not written well, you pay the price for it longer term. That deters the productivity longer term, right? What we want to own up to is writing good quality code, and therefore have tools that instill that right from the outset. Personally, for me, GitHub does a fantastic job at that. It's a well integrated tool chain. It flourishes in the open source. It gets a lot of the open source contributions which improve the product. That vibrant community drives the momentum forward on it. And these advancements in AI coming first into the platform, solving critical problems like security, pushing these things left into the development cycle, are making a huge change. And that's what I want to spend maybe 30 more seconds on is, productivity is not only about having a platform that allows you to cut code in a more productive way, but it's also about being able to take on more ownership of things that are right in the process. Releases have generally been a challenge because you've got bigger organization plays. Their security traditionally has been a barrier because it gets involved right before you're about to press the button to go live and you're told you can't because someone hasn't signed off, right? But bringing these principles left into the execution cycle, you're empowering your developers to really deliver these results quickly and with authority. So for me, that's been the theme that I'm seeing with customers at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Taran, and thank you for the shout out. That is our hope, that we come always with the developer focus, and I hope that you all in the audience and that you here with us today, that you see that in the decisions we make in our tooling. Coming to you next, or just to discuss this about the business objectives, and I believe that listening part in particular is something that you've called out before. How would you like to frame this?
The listening part? Come again, sorry.
Yeah, the listening to the business's needs.
Yeah. So let's give Taran explanation was wonderful for me. I really liked it. But in the cold world of enterprise, things are very strict. It's in the end of the day, it's kind of encapsulated to time to market equals money equals cost reduction equals cost awareness. And in the end of the day, this is the driving factors. And if you want to make a move or make a change and really make an impact, you need to always adhere to those 3 to 4 attributes, which without them, nobody will really give you the opportunity to do something meaningful inside a huge corp. So in many ways, one of the objectives that we have now at NICE, because we are a multi-national company with a lot of employees, is that the way that we grew organically speaking, it was very low, and we tried to we essentially became an acquisition-based company in various ways, and now we're trying to make this what I call silo eradication. Each company that getting bought, you want to stay in their own lane. Don't give me this corp thing. I don't want to keep me out of this hostile environment. And one of the things that we are trying to do in that sense is to really listen to understand from them what is their fear, what their motivation not to congregate as a company. And when we start to see it that way and understand their needs and their fears, we had the social, let's say, consensus that we can push forward. And when we show to the higher management, it's also worthwhile in terms of KPIs, everything is working like magic. So I think this is a right blend between understanding the needs of your clientele, which is, for me, it's internal, and the needs of the hard needs of the higher management.
Yeah, perfect and well said. And that organizational context of the enterprise, it can be very challenging to overcome those silos and to make sure that we're bringing people along with us. Florin, to you next. Your journey of transformation, consolidation of markets and tooling, that sounds like you've had to do a lot of insight there with the business to bring them along with you.
Yeah, I love Taran, our point of view. And actually, I think everyone over here can agree with me that actually the most important asset in our companies is the engineering hours. We need to make sure actually we remove all the roadblocks from our engineers to allow them to write code and focus on actually what they do best. And then we know our developers, they're very good at multitasking. Sometimes they write code, sometimes they debug, sometimes they deploy to production, and then to be honest, the number of tools, technologies, and frameworks in the last few years have exploded. The number of tools our developers and frameworks they need to learn has increased a lot. And then while this is good, also we can create, again, silos, and then our engineers can start to waste a lot of time because maybe sometimes the connectivity between these tools doesn't work. So actually, we are doing 3 fixes in Vodafone to help with the productivity. The first step is efficient tooling. We are looking to invest into like the right tools, and then this is more about if you think about like a best of suite versus a best of breed approach. Maybe they're like the tools individually, they're very good. But if an engineer needs to require access to 5-6 tools differently, they need to connect them, they're going to waste half a day, 1 day just to get their environment up and running. While actually, if you go for a best of suite, you might have like 95% of the capabilities in some of the on some of the areas, but then overall, your engineers are going to be happier because then they don't need to context switch from one tool to another. So what we're trying to go with platforms such as like ADO and GitHub. So at the moment in Vodafone, we use both GitHub. We're going to github.com. We are very big users of ADO as well. Our engineers love both platforms. So at the moment, we keep all the source code on GitHub. But then when it comes to all the other capabilities, they are free to choose between ADO and GitHub. We are looking to use these tools more to allow our engineers not to have to context switch from one tool to another. And then linked to this one, the second thing we are doing is we are streamlining our onboarding process. Our engineers told us they love MacBooks. Right now, we are in the process. As soon as an engineer joins the company, you are able to give them a MacBook to develop on. But what I'm being told by my leadership team, we want our engineers to be productive from day one. So actually, what does that mean? We need to make sure they've got all the tools they need on their laptop, but also they've got access to the tools. Going back a few years ago, our developers had to go to our ITSM system, raise tickets, wait for weeks or months to get access to the tools. But the moment when we hire someone, we already know almost what team they're going to go to, what tools they need, and then we can prepare everything for them. So in the moment when they join, we can send the laptop to their address, they put their Vodafone email address, and then all of a sudden, they've got access to all the tools they need. So by having this efficient tooling and then like a streamlined onboarding process, we get a lot of efficiency. And then the last one, we're hiring new people, but at the same time, we're also looking to upskill some of our, let's say like IT ops colleagues. They are looking to move into engineering roles. And then we want to make sure we've got the right learning paths for everyone. So we're building like learning paths for DevOps, front-end, back-end, full stack, DevOps, if I don't mention it, everything. And then our engineers are fit to do it. And then when we're building these learning paths, we're also tailoring it to our tooling strategy, because then we don't want a developer to go on one of the learning platforms, learn how to use a different tool, and then when they come to their day-to-day work, they're using a different tool. So we're making sure that our learning paths are tied together with our tooling strategy. And then we're seeing a big increase in our productivity, which I will touch on a bit later today.
Brilliant, Florin. And actually, that discussion about learning brings us on to our next question, which I'll hand over to Anna to explain.
Yeah, it is really exciting and quite evident from the different topics you touch on and focus on naturally that you all come from very different companies, right? One company where it's mandated from top how to go about it, another company where you have to fight and build from the ground up. And then with Avanar, Tarun, you've got you represent somebody and that's actually advising clients with the best practices, how they should go about things. So we're quite interested to hear from all of you, because you've been on different transformational journeys. What are some of the key learnings really in that journey as you try and assess how to best improve productivity? Is there anything specific you'd like to share out with the audience today? Tarun, why don't we go first with you?
Sure. So from my perspective, lessons learned is really important, right? Because ultimately, it'd be silly to make the same mistake twice. What I'm seeing as an anomaly when I'm speaking to some of the senior business stakeholders who are looking at transformation and evaluating tooling, they're thinking about metrics, and metrics is a very slippery slope. Wrong decisions can lead to wrong behavior. For example, setting up a metric which is based on lines of code written, lines of code change, is informing a behavior that we need to create more code. We need to write more code, and not necessarily writing more code is being productive in any way. And therefore, is that really a metric worth measuring? Probably not, right? So, this dilemma of what metrics to set up is pretty common with customers, and we tend to educate customers that metrics more and more need to be business outcome driven. So, for example, uptime in the platform, time to market, time from the idea getting into backlog to resulting in working software. And these are metrics that would write the right behavior, would drive your developers to think about commercial value rather than getting into the gold plating. We've seen that, can I polish this line of code to the utmost standard so it can never be penetrated, only to find that that feature never made it to production, right? Because it was canned, right? All that effort wasted. But when we change the dial and focus on metrics that are business driven, then it changes the behavior. The other thing I would say is, I touched on it earlier, it's the best in isolation versus integrated. Your customers have been in conferences where on the booths they see this one product that has become a bit of a gold standard in doing the one thing. But when you are looking at building DevOps, DevSecOps within your organization, integrated tools will deliver more value, because having to integrate the tools yourself comes with a lot of unsaid cost and effort, but also the act of having to manage these tools over time, patch them, keep them up to date is quite a lot of effort. And, not necessarily do you account for this in your total cost of ownership, but if you start to do that, the distinction becomes very easy. The golden mantra that I tell customers is, look at integrated SaaS-based platforms for your DevOps tool chain, but don't get hung up on one tool hosted on VMs, because it's not really going to solve your problem. I want to go back to metrics for a second and touch on this really brilliant question Marco asked, which is, what would be a business case for Copilot? How do we measure the success of Copilot? And it's a good question, because whenever you go back and ask for funding, someone would say, well, what am I getting back for the money I'm about to spend? And I think Copilot, like back in the day, refactoring code, we had this extension from JetBrains, right? There was always a debate, should we put the money on the table to buy it or not? But it's all about being able to write code that's more secure, more modular, more testable. And, a team always comprises of senior developers who've been in the trenches doing, executing on difficult projects, and junior developers who are here learning and hopefully will over time become more mature in their software development practices. GitHub Copilot allows the level playing fields, where at the click of the button within your context of the IDE, you have the best practices available to you, not having to waste time looking on the internet for things to dabble with and tinker with, but real good advice that you can apply. But not only that, right, with the recent advancements in the tool, it allows you to write tests and explain code, which really allows more of the people to act as senior developers. So that productivity gain, really the measure for that is reduced time to market, more security, and if you can get your business teams to approve the cost of Copilot on the back of that, then a different conversation needs to be had with them. So one more lesson learned that I want to touch on before I hand over the mic back to you is adoption. It's really easy to kickstart a program of transformation and bring in tooling. And when you bring in tooling, you expect that there's suddenly going to be this hockey stick effect where everyone in the organization would like to use this tool. On the contrary, that never happens itself. It's about empowering the champions within your organization to take on that product, take on that tool set, and then start to show value, building a guild, building a community of practice around it to drive adoption. And once you get to that critical mass, it's the flywheel that turns itself. But until you get there, it's a lot of hard work. And sometimes organizations, while they're invested in buying the tools, are not as invested in seeing the adoption uptake. And therefore, these transformations aren't successful. So, I think this is an important point that people need to consider when they're putting in the time. Sometimes it's said, and you must have heard this before, is technology is easy. What's difficult is changing people and process, right? So we need to be encompassing of that when we're thinking about a transformation like this. So that's from me. I'll hand back the mic to you.
That's wonderful, Taryn. Thank you so much. A super thorough answer. And if you think about it, you essentially went along that transformation cycle, right? And also onion style, looking at the individual. But then what does it mean for the organizational setup, maintenance of tools? So really wonderfully explained to everyone. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Looking at the individual, you were speaking about mandate, right? And I think it would be quite interesting now to hear from what some of the lessons that you learned, because you had more of a ground up approach, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I will take it from two planes. But first of all, I want to kind of expand or adhere to what Taran was saying. And Copilot is a very hot topic today. And people in the chat I see are very vibrant about how can I show it to my boss. Really, sincerely, this is the easiest task that I ever had in my life. I mean, in many ways, it's just a no-brainer. Of course, that in terms of what Terence said and articulated amazingly, the security, the better linted code, and the better documentation, the faster, everything is right. But in the end of the day, it is very easy to measure. You take one assignment code, you just do it without it, and with it, you just see 400, 500% faster coding. So for $20 a month, this is a no-brainer. This is a very easy product or a tool to justify, financially speaking. And I'm doing it all the time. As an enabler, which I want, maybe it's the stepping stone to my designation in the company, essentially NICE is a very much silo-based enterprise. One of the things that it brought me to is to make some sense in all of those commando-based silos around the world. And when I started my job, and I thought as a technology personnel, you are coming with a technological approach. Okay, I'm coming here, I will get the best tool for you in terms of maintainability and integrations. But slowly but surely, I kind of understand this is have nothing to do with, not nothing, but mainly nothing to do with technology. It has to do with understanding the needs of my clients and their hardships. And I don't know about you, but I'm coming from an infra background, and in a sense, we're always thinking about ourselves as providers. We're providing you amazing solutions. But when before that, I was a lead consultant, and I need to go to R&D groups, understand their needs. And more, I try to understand it to encompass that the real thing that I need to do is to come from a product approach, which means I am a server. I'm not a provider. I need to come to you as an entity here in R&D, understand your pain, understand your hardship, go with you to the trenches and go to the hands-on of what you see from your IDE, which is a totally separate approach that we are trying to encompass in DevOps world. So to put it in layman's terms, what I kind of discovered, which is amazing, that I really need to understand and even to sympathize with my clients in order to give them the right solution. And once you do, in terms of enterprise at least, you need to go for, I call it like 4 easy. And if you have those 4 easies, it's a walk in the park. It needs to be easy onboarding, easy maintenance, easy integration, and easy repurposing or tool banding of designation. For instance, with GitHub, I had an amazing story about it. I mean, we have like around gazillion CI/CD tools in our company and gazillion code repositories and gazillion rundex. And GitHub, in a way, is just amazing. Really, in that source, it is very easy to onboard, very easy to integrate, even very easy to deal with financially. This is amazing. And one of the things that I really, I saw the flexibility of the tool. We all do in this weird scene in DevOps that we are taking Jenkins, which is a CI/CD tool, and we're making it to be on our operational platform. Which all the things that we don't want to do automatically, we just push it to the Jenkins. And this is not, between us, it is working, but not the best approach. But in GitHub, with the GitHub Actions, the banding or the abuse of the tool was kind of natural. The usability of tools, the usability of models, even the sharing of the technological entities within the platform is so easy, so well designed, and in that stand, I mean, this is why I want to come here and share this gospel, because this is a very, very fine-grained, defined tool which gives you a lot of flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Or thank you so much. This is really beautifully said. And I think what you've highlighted in your response there is really the importance of culture. How do you drive and evolve culture? It starts with people. They're working in silos, perhaps from an organizational perspective. And then how do you get to the hearts of them, have them understand the benefits of what you're offering, what you want to serve them with, by really listening to them and tying what they expected to do to some of what the business is looking at as well. So really, really well said. Florin, let's move over to you and have you talk maybe a little bit of some of the key learnings in your journey to assess how to improve productivity in your teams.
So like when I look at my learnings, to be honest, some of them are aligned to Tarun, some of them with our. So we always had like a tooling, a DevOps, not always, but for the last 7-8 years, like a DevOps strategy. But if the tool is not being adopted by the developers, the strategy is useless. So actually what we did based on my beautiful tooling taxonomy, and then actually we went back to the engineers and said, okay, guys, we want you to work with each other. What do you think are the most important tools that you think we should standardize on, that you can, and then for you to be able to communicate with each other? And then we told them, let's not use any tooling names. Let's only use the capabilities. Because then every time, there is always a religious debate. I don't know, like, or Tarun, if you've got this. There's so many like fun boys for one tool, fun people for a different tool. It's like, okay, let's remove all that from the equation and let's only talk about the capabilities. And then most of the people said, oh yeah, a source code sounds like a good idea to have one source code platform. And then, to be honest, we were very lucky. We had GitHub already implemented, but the people were not using it. And then all of a sudden, we started giving people access to GitHub and they started loving it. And then we said, okay, let's call this type of tool Highlander, which means in Vodafone, we've got only one instance of this tool. So everyone in Vodafone needs to use this tool for source code management. People are not allowed to have another source code management platform out there. Because again, if you want to be able to communicate with each other, share code, we need to put it in the same place. If not, you need to give me access, I need to give you access. We waste even more time. So maybe sometimes it's faster for me to write the code myself. Then I said, okay, let's pick a few areas, tools that we're going to call Highlander. Then we're going to have a few flexible tools where people can choose 2 or 3 tools, but then the aim is for these 2 or 3 tools to become a Highlander, but it's not a priority, because what we need to be mindful is we need to balance the strategy with the innovation. We want our teams to be able to innovate while we adopt and then standardize. And at the same time, we need to give our teams plenty of time to learn how the tool works. Just imagine if tomorrow I go to work and be like, guys, we decided to stop everything we do here. There is this new tool coming. We replace everything with it. It's going to be a mess. And then when it comes to flexible tooling, I love what Or mentioned. Well, one example of flexible tooling is CI/CD for the pipeline. We've got ADO pipelines, Jenkins, GitHub Actions. We're seeing more and more people moving from Jenkins over to ADO pipelines or GitHub Actions. But at the moment, we are not pushing it. Our estate of Jenkins is so big. And then I don't really mind. As long as they put the code on GitHub, I'm happy with that at the moment. And then the last set of tools is free tools, where people can choose any tool they want. And then traditionally, this used to be testing tool for us. But I love what Taru mentioned. And then people started sharing the code with each other. But then all of a sudden, if the code was not tested in the same way that they would expect the code to be tested, they will not use that code in production. And then we're seeing now our developers asking us, can you please standardize a bit the testing tools? Because then we want everyone in the company to have the same, at least the same maturity when it comes to the initial testing, like unit testing, integration testing. And then as we mature more, we can evolve the standardizations of more tools. And then basically our biggest learning is start small, understand what the developers want, and then reiterate. And then it's always changing. That's the beauty of my job. Every day our developer, the technology landscape is always changing. There are new technology coming, but we need to be flexible, but at the same time have a few guardrails when it comes to it. Even if, let's say, another source code platform comes tomorrow, which is going to be GitHub. It's very difficult because of the open source of GitHub. But let's say we need to be mindful about, we can't move from one tool to another. So for the Highlander tools, we say we use the Highlander tools for at least a couple of years to allow everyone to be on it. For the flexible tools, we can change every year, every other year. And then for the free, the team can use any tool they want for any project, as long as they're there to the principles, the guardrails we're setting. And then at the moment, it's working for us. And then we just need to see what's going to happen tomorrow when it comes to tooling.
Wonderful, Florin. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's quite interesting because collaboration is a key topic that came up here. How do we make people work with each other? Make sure there's an appetite to do that as well. What's the benefit for that? And with that, I want to hand back over to JP for our final question today.
Yeah, brilliant. And actually, I'd like to come to you next, Taran, because you mentioned that about how do you encourage collaboration? How do you share that knowledge? Is inner source an element in that? And you also referred to guilds and you referred to communities of practice. How have you found good ways to build and foster that collaboration, Taran?
Great question. So, back a few years back, the statement used to be innovation happens in the open source, and very quickly the question became, why cannot we replicate this model in the enterprise to drive the same level of innovation and collaboration? And that's where the concept of inner source really stemmed from, right? So I'm proud to say for customers that I work with, innovation happens in inner source as well. Collaboration happens in an inner source, and you almost need to appreciate that your developers like reduced barriers to entry. And if you're going to give them tools that will allow them to operate seamlessly, then that's going to drive more collaboration. And what I generally find is people like to reuse code. No one wants to rewrite things that have been written before, but there's always this desire to improve it and put your stamp on it, as they say, right? Leave your mark to make sure you're representing, you're enhancing, you're improving, you're adopting, obviously. And that can be done quite effectively with inner source. Now, the collaboration element of it is broader than that, because from a tooling perspective, we want developers to be sharing ideas not only after they've finished writing the code, but during that process as well. And pull requests have a great play in that. And you would see in software development teams, pull requests have pretty much become the norm in how developers work. So back in the day, we used to have this evil of code review. You would print out your code, walk into a room, and I'm not sure everyone in the audience would remember that, right? Because these are practices from my time 10, 15 years ago, where digital wasn't really the first. It was very much, let's print the code, walk into your senior developer's room, and the door gets shut and you get lots of reviews on your comment, and you walk back and try and get it back into the system. And so it doesn't have to be an after act, right? It's also about sharing ideas in the process of writing code. And that's what pull requests really are. It's about getting the dialogue going, getting more people involved. And then if you're using open source IDs like Visual Studio Code or the enterprise tools like Visual Studio Enterprise, you'd see you've got VS Live Share, which allows you within the context of writing the code to be able to collaborate with more developers. And there's nothing more beautiful than seeing wiggly lines in the IDE from 4 or 5 developers trying to co-create a piece of solution and improve it. And that's collaboration for me, right? That's collaboration for developers. And again, with anything, collaboration happens at different levels. You want to be planning for planning, you've got the right tools. And if you do, the outcome from your PI planning, your quarterly planning is recorded effectively in a tool that helps you distill those down into action plans for the sprints when you execute on it. That's collaboration as well. It's about managing and mining the knowledge. And today, if you're using Markdown or GitHub Gist, or you've got your own Jekyll website running, which is capturing docs, then fill your boots. If you have a static website, which has been pumped on the back of Markdown, which captures knowledge, great. If you're using a paid product like Confluence, then that's also good, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about driving the collaboration at the different levels, but meeting your developers where they are.
It's absolutely brilliant. And thinking about the different ways we can make that easy. I loved what you mentioned there about how exciting it is for the developer in that pair programming scenario. That's, live collaboration there, but then also defaulting to trying to be transparent in the communication so we can all learn from each other. Thinking about your story about senior developers teaching junior developers, I think that open by default is very much the way that I think we see as part of GitHub's culture as well, practicing it internally, that we can foster that collaboration. And coming to you all next, and then Florin, or how have you managed to foster collaboration with your role there as the centerpiece, going to meet these teams? How have you found that journey of collaboration and the promotion of inner source potentially?
So here I don't think I have a lot of value to maybe bring to the table in terms of how I got there, because it's very personal. But I will say, I will maybe convey this point though. First of all, it is always about, getting the trust and also to get to showcase, any kind of POC and how you can, gather more successful KPIs. That's fine. Everybody knows that. But one thing which helped me a lot, my background as my breeding house, if you will, I'm from Israel, obviously, and I was my military service was in the Israeli intelligence, in a computing unit, classified. One of the things that they taught us there is that we never really, nobody loses. When you collaborate, you don't lose. You just grow the other one, and vice versa. This whole job security mentality is so asinine, foreign to me as a human being because of this breeding ground. And when you're aiming to a higher cause, in my case, it was keeping my country intact, all the other things which are personal are kind of fading away. So I'm trying to instill this mentality in the enterprise, which is much harder, of course, because the common cause is a little bit different. But when you really show that when you're collaborating, it's not a threat to you. On the contrary, we're just, both of us are growing in certain domains, or, this is a very powerful engine that can take you through a lot and overcome a lot of things further down the road. So if I can bring to understand this collaboration, it doesn't mean a threat to your job security or whatever it is.
Really, really powerful statement, Oren. I think what I'm hearing from you is about collaboration as a foundational piece of culture and the trust and the psychological safety that's needed for anybody in whatever field to do their best work. And I think in our context here, that's making sure people have all the tools that they need, that they are that they feel open to collaborate and are not fearful of any repercussion, like you mentioned, job safety there, for example. And coming to you now, Florin, I know with your context, all the consolidation work that you've had to do as a business, how have you fostered that collaboration? What elements would you say have helped you on that journey?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not going to lie. So at the beginning, a few years ago, we artificially created this collaboration. We created the first global guilds. We had two initial guilds, what we call the API guild and the software engineering guild. These were the main priorities for us, to have standard APIs, so then all our channels can reuse them. And then the other one was to actually have a standard, the more like DevOps practices across the markets. And then our markets, and then a market could be like Vodafone UK, Vodafone Germany, Vodafone Greece, and so on. They could go to the internet and do it. But a lot of times, what about if we're going to use each other as a resource and as a sounding board? Okay, how are you doing that? How are you doing that? And then start to share best practices. Back in the day, it was not that easy to find an onboarding guide, let's say for Jenkins in Vodafone. So basically, we started putting together these people to share best practices with each other. And then we got very lucky, or I got very lucky, 18 months ago when we did a reorg to bring together all the digital teams across Europe. We already, all the developers already sort of like knew each other across the market. And then, but what we started seeing a lot more guilds, communities of practice being spun up. But then I think was the beauty of this is not about actually, while I see the tooling as an enabler, I want our teams to collaborate on the customer-facing solutions, on the end product. It's beautiful for me to see all the code on GitHub, but still, until last year, we had 12 versions of our mobile app. So if you are going to different countries in Europe for Vodafone, the application was looking the same, but actually was developed 12 times. And now by bringing all these people together, everyone said, okay, what about I build a framework, you build that feature, you build that feature, and then we put it in the same space. Then what we did for all the mobile app development, we set up a GitHub organization. For all the chatbot code, we put another GitHub organization, another one for the infrastructure as code. So then people can start to see with each other, and then we can start, and then we've got two very simple principles. Before you build something, please check if someone else has already built it and then reuse it. If not, please do it in such a way that it's easier for others to use it. And then this could be even basic, like put a README file, create a guide how to adopt that one. If I'm looking at our repos right now, they don't have these basic things. And then it's impossible for someone to reuse your code if you don't tell them how to do it. And then maybe like another very good example, a lot of companies right now, they've got a React component library. And then we've got like a UX UI design system. And then almost all the development teams, they were building their own React component library. But it was like, why? Because we've got one design system, and then we're building 12, 15 times the same React components. We merge the most advanced component libraries across Vodafone into one, and then we inner source it. So that everyone in Vodafone can access it. And then we created a very basic support model for it. Instead of, if you've got a problem with one React component library, one React component, you don't need to go raise the ticket. We enable the Microsoft team where everyone in Vodafone can access it, and then they got a guide how to use it. And then if they've got a problem, they can raise it over there. And then an engineer will quickly jump to fix that one, because if they fix it for someone else, they're going to fix it for themselves as well. And then we're seeing loads more examples now of inner source. And then while at the beginning I said we kind of like forced the collaboration, right now I can't even keep track of how many communities of practice to do it. Some of them are very high level, let's say like digital architecture community of practice, to down some very specific guilds, like a testing guild we've got. I mean, we just love it because people are sharing so much. And then sharing it's important, but what's more important for our business is to build the products in a more consistent way. And then hopefully the biggest waste that we can do right now is to build the same product multiple times. So we're trying to reduce that waste by building the product once in a very good way.
Really excellent answer, Florin. And actually, we're going to switch gears now with the time that we have remaining to just have a look at some of your questions. And this one's interesting from Sander, and I'm going to expand it a little bit. It was specifically about communication tools, but we've already talked a little bit about how do you get the right balance between enforcing a standard and allowing developers to make their own, developers and teams to make their own decisions. And you've already touched on this in different areas. So if you have a particular opinion, any of you that you would like to share with us, please unmute yourselves and feel free to discuss this topic with us.
I'll maybe start and then let others chip into it. I find when standards are quite hardly enforced, maybe that's not the thing I wanted to say. When standards are really enforced with developers, people find workarounds. And I guess there's this dilemma of how much do you want to push and how flexible do you want to be? So what I find is we almost need to empower our developers to have the choice of being able to select between things as long as they can meet the outcomes we expect. Classic debate around security, right? Which tool is best to apply security? And you'll find the enterprise has one view, and they'll push that down to the developers. And developers who are keen on using APIs will find that that tool doesn't support APIs, and therefore they're not going to adopt it. Instead, if there's guidance published on what, from a security perspective, is expected as an outcome, then the developers will make sure that they're confining to those outcomes, and therefore the challenge becomes less about defining the tools versus defining the standards, right? And more I'm seeing in consulting, in my consulting job, that customers are moving into this way of working and then giving the developers the flexibility to choose the right tools for the job. Where tools have licenses attached to them, and more analysis needs to be done to see whether they are fit for job, right? This is where some of the senior technical leaders are brought in. But where tools are, let's put it this way, low value to spend time on analyzing, then I think you shouldn't waste that time and instead empower your developers to make the call.
Maybe just to focus on the communication part, because then in Vodafone, you used to have like both Slack and Teams. And then our engineers, we kept talking about chat ops. And then we spoke with them about what do they do about chat ops? They're like webhooks, you can trigger events, you can build infrastructure, destroy infrastructure. And then Microsoft Teams, in the last year or so, they've developed a lot. So Vodafone is using Microsoft a lot, and then we're seeing actually how Microsoft Teams has developed a lot. So we ask our engineers to give it a trial, and then right now we've chosen Microsoft Teams as our product for chat ops. Almost everything you could do in Slack. So I'm not saying Microsoft Teams is better than Slack, but actually it's all about picking one tool. And then since, as a lot of you mentioned in the chat, you've got contracts with Microsoft Teams is included, have a go at Microsoft Teams. We're seeing almost everything we're doing in Slack, we can do in Teams. Maybe what we told our engineers is to have an open mind about it. Don't expect to do it the same way you're doing it in Slack, but there are ways you can do it. You just need to agree on these new ways of working, which I'm not saying is more convoluted, more complicated. It's just a different way to do it. Then for us, it's working. We've got third-party apps like GitHub or like observability tools installed. Microsoft, at the moment, they've got a very strong ecosystem of partners for Microsoft Teams. So if any of your other vendors, they've got like a third-party application, and then you can talk via Microsoft to push the vendor to create a Microsoft Teams extensions to get everything in there. We've got internal applications, which now are enabling our developers to push via Microsoft Teams. And then it's working fine, but then it's just as Tarun mentioned, find a balance, and then the engineers, they need to understand. So instead of maybe spending the money on 2 or 3 communication tools, we can spend the money to get them licenses for something else. And then a lot of times what we're trying to do is remove the licensing discussion from the engineering language. We're trying to make it as easy for them so they don't need to worry about licenses. So a lot of time it is, I would love to use your tool, Florin, but how do I get the license? Do I need to go to my manager? And then what we're trying to do internally is that as long as you're in the Vodafone engineering, you can use the tools. It's not behind the scenes, there is still a cross charge because we've got 12 operating companies, each of them has got their own P&L, but still it's seamless for the engineer. That's what I care about it. Behind the scenes, finance can figure it out how to do it. But from an engineering perspective, it's seamless, or it's as seamless as we can do it now based on the current processes.
Perfect. And we're actually at the end of our time here together now. And I just wanted to take the time to thank you, Tarun, to thank you, Florin, for your help in discussing this hot button topic with us and the audience here today. Really appreciate your time today. Let's just talk a little bit about the remaining events today. Anna, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Really fantastic insight shared. I hope everybody else enjoyed it as much as we did. If you're interested in a bit more of the practicalities, please do join the demos and live sessions, which are going to happen throughout the afternoon. There's EMEA specific sessions, but you can actually also attend the ones that are happening during US time, and maybe even Pacific if you're interested in. For example, today at 3 p.m. UK, 4 p.m. Central European time, we've got one about reducing DevOps toolchain complexity with GitHub. Now, here's something else I was thinking. You're interested in meeting like-minded users, or maybe even some of our speakers in person. We actually do have in-person Galaxy events happening throughout May in London, Paris, and Munich. So I recommend you go to our blog, go to our website, and find those pages where you can register for those events. Aside from that, thanks very much, everyone, for joining us today, and have a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Thank you,
everyone.
Please do fill out the survey if you get the opportunity. Take care. See ya. Bye from me and Mona.